Well, we won't wait a few minutes. I think we have enough of a group here. We were going to wait just a couple just to see if there were a few more minutes, a few more people coming, but we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Daphne Lamel. I'm the Community Development Director with the Harris County Community Services Department. This morning's presentation is actually going to be a panel discussion, and I'm going to turn it over for my counterparts here to introduce themselves so you know who they are.
Good morning, everyone. My name is James Wade. I am the manager for the Property Acquisition Department at the Harris County Flood Control District.
Buenos días. La señora Daphne Lamel es nuestra directora del Departamento de Servicios Comunitarios del Condado de Harris. El señor James Wade está representando al Distrito de Control de Inundaciones del Condado de Harris. Ellos van a presentar la información hoy día.
So without further ado, let me go ahead and show you what today's agenda will be, and we'll go through those. So we've done our introductions, so you know who's going to be talking to you this morning. We're going to go, the presentation will last about the next 30 to 40 minutes. We're going to go through a program overview, and then we're going to do a Q&A, and then we're going to talk about your next steps today, because we will be here for the next several hours to help anybody who has questions or take information from you. Before I go on, though, I do want to point out, for those of you who, when you walked in today, you registered and signed up, if you got a blue folder or a red folder, in that folder is a copy of today's presentation. We do welcome you to follow along in our presentation, write your questions down as we go through, and we will be taking questions at the end so we can get through the information quickly. But write them down, and we do have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation.
Ahí tienen la información y presentación también de lo que se va a hablar hoy día. Les recomendamos que cualquier pregunta que ustedes tengan la puedan escribir y así compartirla al final de la presentación.
So first of all, many of you may have the question, why were you invited here today? So let me answer that for you. You're invited here today because you've already made a decision to volunteer to sell your home to the Harris County Flood Control District. That is a great decision because of where you currently live at. For those of you who have a blue folder, what that means is we have your information. We know you volunteered, and we've invited you here today because there's additional information you need to know about where you currently live and the options that you have under the buyout program. There's actually several sources of funding that will be available to you that offers different options to you, so there will be a decision for you to make. So right now we're going to do a review. Many of you, because you've already volunteered, you understand there's a benefit to this program. But we're going to cover this because it's always important to reiterate why is it we have a buyout program. And I'm going to turn it over to James.
So some of the benefits of our buyout program, obviously the most important benefit is it relocates you and your family to higher ground out of harm's way. It eliminates future flood damages and health and safety risks for you as well as any rescuers who may have to come in and help rescue you from your home. Reduces repetitive flood insurance payments and federal disaster assistance. You also, with our program, you receive a pre-flood fair market value appraisal. What that means is you get the fair market value as of the day before Hurricane Harvey, August 25th, 2017, assuming that there was no damage. There's no real estate commissions. Typically, if you sell your home on the open market, you're going to pay 6%, 3% to a seller's agent, 3% to a buyer's agent. In our program, you're not going to need to pay any real estate agents. And then you're also going to qualify potentially for relocation benefits. Part of what you can receive are benefits for moving costs and also a housing supplement to get you into a comparable home outside of the floodplain.
Otros de los beneficios que tiene este programa de compra es que se le va a pagar o se le va a comprar su casa de acuerdo al valor que tenga la propiedad antes de la tormenta, que fue agosto 25 del 2017. Otra de las cosas, beneficios que tiene es que también usted se ahorraría por aproximadamente el 6% de lo que se le tendría que pagar al comprador y al vendedor si usted pone su casa a la venta. Otro de los beneficios también es que es unos beneficios de reubicación que incluyen el pago de los costos de cierre de vivienda existente y de reemplazo, gastos de mudanza y un suplemento de vivienda para una vivienda comparable fuera de la llanura de inundación o que nosotros le llamamos la zona de inundación, sujeto a los requisitos de elegibilidad.
And finally, for those of you that have flood insurance, you may notice in the last several years your flood insurance rate has been increasing steadily. What's happening there is the National Flood Insurance Program is removing federal subsidies from subsidized homes whose homes were built prior to flood insurance rate maps. So flood insurance rate maps became effective in Harris County around the mid-1980s. If your home was built before that, you've been receiving a federal subsidy. The National Flood Insurance Program is removing those federal subsidies, and that flood insurance annual premium is expected to rise 20% thereabouts every year until it reaches actuarial rates. So if you participate in our program, obviously, and relocate to a home outside of the floodplain, you can alleviate that problem of that increasing flood insurance.
De acuerdo con la ley de asequibilidad de seguros contra inundaciones para propietarios de vivienda, si usted tiene o tuvo aseguranza cobertura en su propiedad, se especifica que hay aumentos, podría haber aumentos de tarifas para ciertas estructuras construidas antes de los mapas de llanura de inundación. También podría ser nuevos recargos para todas las pólizas, o sea, que le aumente su seguro de aseguranza en su propiedad. Evite todo esto si usted participa en nuestro programa, reubicándose a una área fuera de la zona de inundación.
So as I mentioned earlier, now we're going to talk about what are your options. Now you've heard a lot of the benefits, and many of you were already aware of those. So now let's talk about what options you have. You've been invited here today because you live in an area that actually qualifies for more than one option under the buyout program. So we're going to explain those to you so you can make an informed decision. Those two programs are the first of those two programs is a program that the Harris County Flood Control District has already applied for funding and will be receiving funding from FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, through the Hazard Mitigation Program. That is one source of funding for buyout programs, and it has requirements and benefits to that program. The second option that you qualify for because of where you live is what's known as the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding that the Harris County has received as a result of Hurricane Harvey. And it's known as the Project Recovery Buyout Program. So going forward, I'm going to refer to these as the FEMA program or the Project Recovery or HUD program. Those are the two options under buyout that you qualify for if you have a blue folder, and we're going to talk about those in the next few slides. This is how the funds flow, just a little bit of background information here. As you can see to the left is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's the Community Development Block Grant Funds. That's how those funds flow to us. And then FEMA, and there's two programs under FEMA that fund buyout programs. These funds then flow to the state of Texas and then locally to local subgrantees, Harris County and Harris County Flood Control District, and then ultimately to local homeowners such as you. That's why you're here today.
En un programa de compra queremos dejarles saber programa de compra, pero ustedes tienen dos opciones. El condado de Harris ha recibido o está en proceso de recibir aproximadamente 400 millones de múltiples fuentes para compras en el condado de Harris. Dos de estas fuentes de financiamiento incluyen FEMA, que es la Agencia Federal de Manejo de Emergencia. En la otra es CDBG, que es Subvención para el Desarrollo de la Comunidad a través de HAC, que es el programa de recuperación de desastres, proyectos de recuperación de programa. En esta gráfica ustedes pueden observar que estas subvenciones están disponibles a través de dos otorgantes federales. Una de ellas es el Departamento de Vivienda y Desarrollo Urbano de Estados Unidos, se le conoce por sus siglas en español como HUD. La otra es la Agencia Federal de Manejo de Emergencias, FEMA. El financiamiento de los otorgantes de fondos a nivel federal se asignan a los beneficiarios estatales, como vemos en la gráfica color verde. Después de eso vienen a los subbeneficiarios a nivel local, que seríamos la azul de en medio, que está está el departamento de nosotros, servicios comunitarios y de inundaciones de control del condado, que representa el señor James. Y finalmente se otorga a los propietarios de viviendas, a ustedes. Por eso es importante y les agradecemos su presencia de hoy.
So a little bit about the timeline.
So if you look from left to right, everyone here with the blue folder, again, has already volunteered for the program. That's the first step. It's a voluntary program. You must volunteer to be eligible for it. Then what we do is we identify which properties meet our criteria, the flood control districts, the community service department, and then we go after and secure the funding. Now we have already secured the funding in this case. We've got FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funds, and we also have HUD Community Development Block Grant funds. So we have the funds available. We've gone through the longest step there, which you notice is typically 8 to 18 months. We're right around the 12-month mark now, so we're right within this timeline. Then we go into if you qualify for the Community Development Block Grant Program, there is an income verification program or income verification step where the Community Services Department has to make sure that you meet those income qualifications for that program. That's about a 2-month process. Then we go into the appraisal. Again, we do the pre-flood fair market value appraisal the day before the hurricane hit. We do the agreement for sale, determine your relocation benefits, and then move on to closing and moving into your new replacement home.
En esta gráfica que ustedes pueden observar, es un estimado, es un calendario para dejarles saber aproximadamente el tiempo que puede durar el proceso de nuestro programa. Primeramente se identifican a los dueños que ya han sido ustedes, que ya están identificados como sus propiedades dañadas. Después de esto se determina los fondos que estén disponibles para este programa, lo cual ya se ha hecho, ya tenemos los fondos disponibles a este programa. El Departamento de Recuperación de este proyecto, la diferencia es que se incluye una revisión de ingresos. Si ustedes optan por este programa, se les deja saber que tiene que estar revisión de ingresos. Ya después de eso, se concluye una evaluación de aproximadamente dos meses. En la línea morada se hace un acuerdo de venta que aproximadamente es de un mes. Finalmente ya se determinan los beneficios que usted podría calificar para reubicarlo y se daría el cierre y estaría listo para moverse a su propiedad nueva.
So let's talk about a little bit about the difference in the programs. This slide is meant to really go over what are the benefits that you'll get based on the two different programs. What we're calling the FEMA program is what we will normally call our base incentives. Those base incentives are available in both programs. So with FEMA and with HUD, you get pre-storm fair market value for the purchase of your existing home. You get a moving cost stipend, and you get a replacement housing incentive up to $31,000 if you're the owner. There's a different amount for renters if there's a renter in the unit, But for owners, if you own the property, you could get up to $31,000 toward your replacement home. That is where the FEMA program stops. If you decide to come into the Project Recovery Program, you get an additional access to a menu of incentives that will help you find replacement housing comparable to the home you're leaving now and comparable to the situation you're currently in. Let's review some of those. Because you live in an area that is very high risk, everyone here today who has a blue folder will automatically, if you choose to go into Project Recovery, you automatically get an additional 5% incentive on top of your acquisition value of your home. So that is automatic. There's also an equity incentive that will be made available to you if you need that. And what is that? Equity incentive is meant to fill that gap between the current value of your home and a home that you find on the market. And it's meant to put you in a situation that you were in financially before in your current home. If you currently have zero mortgage, we want to put you in a home where you have zero mortgage. That is the incentive that is really key here, because we do understand that you don't want to leave your home and leave it for a situation where you're more financially behind than you were before. If you've lived in your home and you've paid your home off, you want the benefit of living in a home without a mortgage. We understand that. And so the program has been set up and designed to allow to fill that gap up to that difference between what you currently owe and what your replacement home value is. There's also a rehabilitation incentive. Let's say you find a replacement home somewhere else in the community or near your community outside the high-risk area you currently live in, but that home does need some repair work. You can receive an incentive to cover the cost to repair that home to the decent, safe, and sanitary or minimum standards that it needs to meet for you to live there comfortably. Down payment assistance. If you are currently under a mortgage and you're looking to buy a home of a certain value, down payment assistance will also be made available if you do choose to go into another mortgage situation. So that will be made available as well. Housing search and advisory services. Project Recovery has funded services to work with you one-on-one if you need additional help finding replacement housing anywhere in the community. We will work with you and help guide you through that process and connect you to resources available in the community to help you find a home that you're looking for. So as you can see, based on this list, Project Recovery comes with a lot of incentives. They really are meant to help folks find replacement housing somewhere else, and taking into account the current situation that you're living in.
El programa de compra también cuenta con beneficios y incentivos. Veamos estos, explicaremos a detalle uno por uno. El incentivo base, que le llamamos a los fondos que vienen de FEMA. Primeramente se le pagaría lo que su propiedad, lo que está valorada en el mercado justo antes de la tormenta. También cuenta con un estipulado por costos de mudanza. Incentivo de vivienda de reemplazo hasta un máximo de 31,000 para propietarios. Si no eres dueño de la casa, pero solamente la rentas la casa, esa es otra cantidad. Aparte de esto, también tenemos incentivos premium, que esto lo incluye en el programa de recuperación Harvey. Repasemos estos incentivos. El incentivo de vulnerabilidad social podría recibir hasta un 5% del precio de compra. Incentivo de equidad. La asistencia para que no deba más en su casa de reemplazo de lo que debe en su casa actual. Por ejemplo, si su casa, usted ya no tenía una cuota mensualmente a su casa y no debía nada a su casa. Nosotros queremos ponerlo en la misma situación con este incentivo. Incentivo de rehabilitación. Esta asistencia para hacer las reparaciones necesarias a la vivienda de reemplazo para que sea decente, segura y sanitaria. Es decir, si ustedes encuentran una casa fuera de la área de inundación y necesitan reparaciones, con esta asistencia nosotros podemos ayudarle a hacer las reparaciones en esa casa. Asistencia de pago inicial. Si ustedes quieren comprar una casa, les podemos asistir también con hasta $35,000 para cubrir los costos del cierre y reducir la compra principal para una hipoteca de vivienda de reemplazo. Además de eso, tenemos búsqueda de vivienda y servicios de asesoramiento, que cuenta con administradores de casos y navegadores de vivienda
So Project Recovery, as mentioned earlier, while the benefits, many more benefits are there, there are additional eligibility requirements for that program as well. So we're going to cover some of these here. For Project Recovery, which is the HUD-funded program of buyout, you have to be a U.S. citizen or eligible resident status to qualify. You must be current on your property taxes and child support payments. You must be able to demonstrate clear title and ownership of the property. You must complete a household income review, and you must sign a 5-year promissory note for the value of assistance above and beyond the replacement cost of your home. In other words, any incentives that you get, you would be agreeing to a forgivable, long-term, 5-year promissory note, basically saying that during that 5 years, as long as you stay in your replacement home, you do not have to pay that back to us, but if you do sell it beforehand, you would have to owe some of it back.
Si ustedes optan por elegir el programa de proyecto de recuperación Harvey, estos son los requisitos de elegibilidad. Algunos de ellos son que debe ser ciudadano de Estados Unidos o ser residente con estado elegible. Debe estar al día con los impuestos a su propiedad y manutención infantil, que le llamamos nosotros child support. Debe poder demostrar título limpio y titularidad de propiedad. Debe completar la revisión de ingreso familiar y debe firmar un pagaré por el valor de asistencia de 5 años. Esto último quiere decir que si se le otorga la asistencia, usted debe permanecer en su casa por un mínimo de 5 años. Si usted decide vender la casa antes de este tiempo, entonces usted tendría que devolver algo de la asistencia que se le dio. Si usted cumple con los 5 años, usted ya no tendría que pagar la asistencia.
So let's compare the two programs. In your handout, in the presentation, you can see how the two compare. For benefits and incentives, you see the first 3 are for both programs. You could get both of those. You get the buyout purchase price, which is of your existing home, which is pre-storm fair market value. You get moving expenses covered. You get replacement housing incentive, an initial replacement housing incentive of up to $31,000. Within Project Recovery, you would also be available to choose from a menu of other incentives, such as the social vulnerability, which is the 5% incentive on top of the existing acquisition, equity incentive, rehabilitation incentive, down payment assistance, and housing search and advisory services.
En resumen, esto es lo que ofrecen los programas. El programa de FEMA cuenta, si ven acá en ambos proyectos, FEMA y el proyecto de recuperación, se le pagaría el valor justo de su propiedad. También ambos programas le pagarían con costos de mudanza. Igualmente tendría el incentivo de reemplazo de vivienda. El incentivo de vulnerabilidad social solamente estaría incluido en el proyecto de recuperación Harvey. El incentivo de equilibilidad, incentivo de rehabilitación, asistencia con el pago inicial y búsqueda de vivienda y servicios de asesoramiento.
So if we compare the programs and look at the eligibility requirements, really and truly the only one that would have to be met for both programs is you have to have clear title to the home that you're selling to Flood Control District. Beyond that, Project Recovery has a few more, and those include the income eligibility, the citizenship or resident status, property tax status, child support payment status, and then agreeing to the 5-year promissory note for any incentives that you receive.
Ser ciudadano de Estados Unidos o residente con un estado elegible, estar actual con los impuestos a la propiedad, estar actual con los pagos de manutención infantil y también tendría que firmar un pagaré por el valor de asistencia de 5 años.
So other considerations, some things to think about now that we've gone through the differences in the programs. First of all, as I've said, everyone here with the blue folder, you're eligible for either program. So there's a choice for you to make. We have the funding today to buy you out. You've already volunteered. So the money is there and there's a choice to make. We're hoping that we've given you the information to make that choice, but we're going to be here longer to answer any questions that you may have. Project Recovery, as mentioned in the requirements, does require, and usually adds to the time frame for processing of your buyout application because we do need to collect a lot of household income information. We understand a lot of people don't want to turn that over. If that's not what you want to do, we have the FEMA buyout program through Harris County Flood Control District. You're eligible for that as well. So keep in mind that's one of the main differences between the two programs. And then lastly, if you've already replaced or if you've already purchased your replacement home and you're just waiting for buyout, we do recommend that the FEMA buyout program is probably the most program suitable to you at this point, only because there's certain requirements that we have to do in looking at your replacement home ahead of time on the project recovery side. However, if you're still interested in project recovery, we can still discuss that with you and look at your case. I think that's it, James, unless you want to add anything.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Daphne was saying. We really want to, excuse me, encourage folks to register through Community Services Department, through Project Recovery, to try to get you qualified for those additional incentives. However, if you think you may not meet those qualifications and or you're in a time crunch, we would encourage you to talk with the flood control table as well, because again, the funding is there for both programs. It's just a matter of what your time frame is.
Otras cosas que considerar. La primera es que queremos que ustedes entiendan que todos ustedes son elegibles para el programa de compra. Solamente que tienen dos opciones. Tienen que determinar si usted tiene la carpeta de color azul que se le entregó. Ya están los fondos disponibles para comprar su casa. Excepto que hay cositas que tienen que considerar. Si opta por elige el programa de recuperación Harvey, tiene que saber que en este proyecto se requiere revisión y submisión de ingresos de todos los miembros de familia que sean de 18 años o más. También puede que tarde un poquito más de tiempo porque se ha requerido que verifiquemos estos ingresos también. Por últimamente, si usted ya compró su casa y está apresurado en cuestión de tiempo, posiblemente la mejor opción que usted tenga es a través de FEMA, el participar en ese programa. El señor Wade hizo un anuncio que dice que se les deja saber y que ustedes pueden registrarse con el Departamento de Servicios Comunitarios para si quieren tomar ventaja de los incentivos que ofrece el programa. De lo contrario, si ustedes piensan que no requieren con esos beneficios o requisitos, mejor dicho, la otra opción es que participen en el programa de FEMA.
We're going to review a few frequently asked questions, and I do want to point out in your folder all of these questions with answers are included, so feel free to go through them. We really want to be able to open the floor up for your questions because I'm sure you have a lot. But just to cover a couple of these, one of the ones that we hear a lot is what's taking so long. As mentioned earlier, one of the biggest delays is getting the funding. We do have the funding. We got it this year. Yes, we're still 12 months after Harvey, we understand. But at least that challenge has been met. So at this point, it's just a matter of processing applications and working with you one-on-one to get that information collected and get closing scheduled and helping you find replacement housing. So we understand, we appreciate your patience. We know it's been a long time coming, and so we do understand that, and we're working as quickly as we can, but at least that first hurdle is covered.
Esas son unas preguntas frecuentes en su paquete que usted recibió. Hoy día están estas preguntas. La primera pregunta, por ejemplo, es ¿qué es lo que está tomando tanto tiempo? Algo de que nos ha tomado mucho tiempo es en el asegurar los fondos recibidos. Hoy día contamos ya con estos fondos que están disponibles para asistirle a usted.
One of the questions that's not there is we get a lot of questions about, well, I've already repaired my home, I'm not interested anymore. And we just want to encourage you that even if you've repaired your home, and we understand people can't wait, you have to do what you have to do to live in a home that's habitable. But we want to let you know that regardless of whether you've already repaired and spent your money, that does not disqualify you. We will work with you to find replacement housing and purchase your home pre-storm value. So that does not disqualify you. We just encourage you to leave an area that there is no option for the areas that you currently live in, and we've looked across the county. There are certain areas that there is no drainage project that will alleviate the flooding in those areas. Flood Control District has done a really good job at looking at options, and we've identified the areas there really is no option but to acquire these homes, because that is the only option to mitigate the hazards to you living there.
Una de las preguntas frecuentes es, si ustedes ya hicieron reparaciones a su casa, ¿eso podría descalificarme de continuar o participar en el programa? La respuesta es no. Aún si ustedes ya hicieron reparaciones a su casa, nosotros todavía le podemos asistir a ustedes. No los descalifica para participar en este programa. Queremos que ustedes entiendan que la propiedad donde usted reside ha sido identificada como una propiedad ya de alto riesgo, que ya el Departamento de Control de Inundaciones ha identificado que no hay otra forma de poder salvar o reparar su casa. Ya no hay otra forma. La única forma es que usted saliera de esa unidad y poder relocarse a otra casa que sea una área que sea de menos inundación o que no sea de inundación. Pero es importante, como quiera, si ya hicieron reparaciones en su casa, todavía puede participar en nuestro programa.
Yeah, just to expand a little bit on what Daphne was saying on that last bullet, the reason why you're here and you have your blue folder is because flood control identified the area that you're living is very high risk. And what that means is typically you're several feet deep or deeper in the floodplain. And when you're several feet deep, there's only so much engineering that the flood control district can do in terms of detention basins and making channels wider and deeper in order to bring that floodplain back into the channel, or store that flood water in a big hole in the ground in a detention basin when we have these large rain events like we had today. Prior to the mid-1980s, there were no building regulations in the floodplain. So a lot of homes were built that were built in areas that were very high risk. That's because those floodplains weren't mapped. They weren't drawn. There was no regulation. So basically what we're trying to do is correct that problem by removing those areas that are such high risk and converting them back into something that can be open space, which could be potentially a park, that could be a community amenity to other folks. And potentially if there is an area where we can use all of the property once we purchase it to do a flood reduction project such as a basin, we have that option as well.
Básicamente, el señor Wade ha explicado que es importante que entiendan que la ubicación de su casa ha sido afectada y ya ha sido vista por el Departamento de Ingenieros, que ellos han visto que no hay otra forma de aliviar el problema de inundación. Hay un mapa que se hace de cierto tiempo, cuando posiblemente se hizo construcción en sus casas o se construyeron sus casas, no estaban disponibles estos mapas, que aún día se han afectado con las repetidas lluvias e inundaciones. Posiblemente dice él que si se deja vacante la casa, se tomaría esos lotes como parques, y sería el único uso que podría tener el área donde ustedes están situados. Nada más, no se puede hacer más como para volver a vivir ahí en esa área.
So we do have time to take questions now. So we do have a microphone. Nellie, you were gonna. Do we have any questions from the group?